The Success in South Florida podcast is brought to you by the team at Rossen Law Firm. If you need DUI or criminal defense representation, call the Rossen Law Firm at 754-206-6200 or check the description of today's episode for more contact information. The Rossen Law Firm, helping good people when bad things happen so they can achieve their best futures.
Welcome to another episode of the Success in South Florida podcast. I'm your host, Adam Rossen, and on today's show, we have Frank Ramos. Frank is an attorney down in Miami, but he's not just an attorney. He is a law school and attorney mentor, coach, practice advisor. He's an author. He's written, we'll find out exactly how many, but think of tons of books with on variety of topics. And I had the pleasure of meeting Frank a few months ago and listening to him on another podcast. And I was like, I need to talk to this guy. He's so smart and has so much knowledge and information to give. And especially in a field that's highly competitive and highly combative, such as the legal field, he is truly one of the good guys who is always giving back. So Frank, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you on.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate being a guest in your show.
Yeah. So Frank, first of all, let's just kind of talk about just you, where you're at and what you do now. And then I want to go back, and kind of talk just, kind of about you as kind of young lawyer growing up and things like that. So really, what's your focus on right now?
Sure. I'm a civil defense lawyer, meaning that I represent companies and corporations on the defense side and civil matters, whether they be personal injury, employment, commercial, or other. And I've been in that field and in that space for all my career. I've been doing this for about 27 years and have always been doing civil defense work and been at this firm for most of my career at Clark Silver Delay, which is about a dozen or so of us. We're now in the airport region or area, and I enjoy it. It's fun. And in doing all that, I kind of learned that there are lots of folks in my space that didn't have mentors, didn't have anybody to talk to. And that's how this other part of my life and career kind of took off.
Right. So when was it in your legal career when this kind of epiphany happened?
I think that evolved. I think really early on in my career, I kind of questioned whether or not I was any good at what I did.
Right.
And so I started writing these short form articles, kind of summarizing how-to pieces from sort of a young lawyer's perspective. And I kept doing that for a long time. And eventually I started writing books and giving speeches and presentations that are geared toward lawyers about the practice. And then that evolved into just kind of giving life and career advice, not to just lawyers, but to other professionals about how to do personal strategic planning, how to create and pursue long-time goals, and public speaking, a whole host of things. So, it's evolved a lot over the last 25 plus years, but it basically started out with trying to help myself, and then along the way, I was helping others as well.
Right. Well, that's the way it mostly starts, especially as us lawyers, when we're young, some of us think we can conquer anything, and others, right, have that fear inside of them that maybe the institution of law or law school has kind of put that imposter syndrome in people. So it's completely natural to just have some of those doubts. I mean, I know, even when I was a young prosecutor, I was a little bit mix of both. I was out there wanting to conquer the world. I can try anything, but then, at times like, oh, wait a minute, can I really do this? Am I really good? Am I really, what if I screw this up? Right. And so that's great that you kind of took that and had an outlet for it. And then just the universe has a way to make things happen.
They do it, and it's a great example. I mean, our jobs are kind of odd as lawyers because I don't know any other profession where you're trying to do your job and someone else is trying to prevent you from doing it. Because we have this adversarial system. It's like if a surgeon was trying to perform an operation, there was another surgeon on the other side of the table pulling the scalpel out of his hand.
That'd be interesting.
Pretty complicated, I guess. So it's stressful. It can be anxiety inducing, as you noted, and all of that kind of helped me realize that other people in my shoes needed some guidance. And so I provided what I could.
Right. So it started really from you maybe as like a kind of in a way to journal, but publicly by writing these blogs. But did you have any mentors or coaches or help of your own at that age?
I had a lot of folks who I could reach out to both in the firm and outside the firm who were willing to spend time to talk to me. And I was very appreciative of that. And most people aren't willing to do that. Most people, whatever profession it may be, whether it's lawyers or others, we're all busy. We all have
Right.
lives and families. And to have a stranger come to you and ask you for help is a little unusual, I suppose. And to sit down with him or her for coffee or lunch and provide them some life advice is also a little unusual. And so I was lucky enough that I did have a handful of people from time to time be willing to sit down and talk to me and shed some light and share their advice and wisdom. And I still remember, those sit downs, those coffees, those lunches, and made me realize how important they were. So I started trying to do a lot of that myself in terms of meeting young lawyers and young professionals for coffee. And there was a while where I was probably meeting folks 2 or 3 times a week. Our new offices are right across from the airport. Our old offices were in the heart of Brickell, and there's
So that
probably
was a lot easier.
yeah, it was like a coffee shop every other block. So it was easy to meet up with people there, a little bit easier than it is now, although I still do it. But then it was just, I get up a little bit earlier, go to the office, and then walk across the street and meet somebody for a cup of coffee and help him or her with whatever was on their mind. I certainly encourage all your listeners, if you're at a point in your career where you've kind of gotten past the hump and you're feel comfortable with what you're doing and you have something to teach and something to show and others can learn from it, take the time, because I think we all have some responsibility to whatever career profession we have to pay it forward.
Right. Oh, I absolutely agree with that 100%. And I can tell you what, as basically growing up in the criminal field, right, as being starting off as a prosecutor, then becoming, a defense attorney, really after only being a prosecutor for 2 years. I was surprised that there were so many people that were willing to help, but I always, there was no structure behind it. It was just, people were like, oh, if you need something, and they'd be like, oh, hey, can we do it? Go to lunch, go to coffee, or can I ask you these questions? Sure, sure, sure. But there was no, it wasn't like an official mentor-mentee relationship. It wasn't any structure behind it. There was just, I'll answer questions and give life advice or practice advice or, case advice about how to do X, Y, and Z. And as I've gotten older, I've always found the more structure that there is behind this and a regular cadence of things where then it's in your mind, you go, oh, I have a meeting with my mentor next week. I can bring him or her these 3 problems. It increases the effectiveness exponentially,
I
from
agree. If you're running your own company, it's important that you are spending quality time with your team to help mentor and develop them. And if you're the employee, or if you are, the junior associate or whatever you are at your firm, company, or entity, that you are making the effort to develop those relationships with those above you, and that you stay top of mind in front of their eyes and seek out their advice and their help, because you may be there today, but you may not be there tomorrow, either by your choice or their choice. And it's always up to us to, we control our own careers. No one's coming to save us. No one's coming to help us. And so we need to seek out the opportunities that are available to us and make the most of them. And for those of us who do have that privilege, we really owe it not only to ourselves and our companies, but to those beneath us to sort of, lend a hand and bring them up.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. So now I want to take it back a little bit. Did you always know you wanted to be a lawyer, or what was that kind of pivotal moment for you?
It's I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and there weren't that many lawyer shows then. I remember when I started high school, LA Law just started, and that really
Right.
kind of caught my attention. And and on black and white, I could watch the old lawyer shows like Perry Mason and so forth. And there was this one show that was on PBS. It was on Sunday nights, and it was basically a roundtable of trial lawyers. And they would talk about trials, which I thought was kind of a weird show, but as a young kid, I thought it was kind of
Right.
interesting. And so I had enough media, both in terms of television shows and movies from time to time, that it intrigued me. And it always kind of stuck in the back of my mind. And when I went to college, I majored in poli sci. I was thinking maybe getting into politics, maybe getting into writing, and then ultimately decided on law school. I went to both undergrad and law school here in Miami. And it just I kind of fell into it. I can't say that this was sort of a lifelong dream. It was always something, it was always on the short list, and it worked out for me. Law is one of those areas where, unlike other areas, it doesn't really matter what your background is. You can get into law
Right.
school and do okay and move on with your life. There are theater majors and music majors and science majors, all sorts of majors in law school. If I want to be a doctor, you
Just
got to be a chemistry or
right.
or a science major or
Biology.
something,
Yeah.
right? Biology. If you want to be an accountant, you're an accounting major. Law school is one of those careers where you're 22 years old and you haven't decided what to do with your life, and you can decide to be a lawyer, which is a little weird.
Right.
Uh, and so, and being 52, being of the Generation X group category, I think a lot of my peers kind of fell in that same category. It's like, because my parents, like, they were blue collar workers, and I think and I was a first generation lawyer, and I think a lot of people from my period were first generation lawyers, and so it's like okay, we're gonna do this, I guess. And some of us enjoy it, some of us don't. Some of us have moved on from the profession, some of us haven't. Some of us become more business minded, and started shops, or started other businesses, and so forth. But kind of a long answer to your question, it was always kind of top of mind, but it was never a complete passion project for me.
Right. And what I've noticed is a lot of people go to law school without direction or without a true understanding of what it's like to be a lawyer. So whenever I lecture anywhere or meet people, I always say, well, first of all, how do you know you even want to be a lawyer?
Right.
Right? Why? Because your parents said so, because you might think that all lawyers are rich, which is definitely not true, right? Or you grew up and you liked arguing, right? None of those are real reasons to go to law school. And I always say intern with as many, or meet, first of all, meet as many lawyers as you can, talk to them, and also intern, work if you can in the summer, or intern there at different fields, right? You might think you love criminal law, and then you may hate it. You may say tax law is so boring, and you could work at a tax law firm and go, wow, this is so intricate and cool of how if we do X and Y, they pay less taxes, and this is how we, battle the IRS, whatever, right? Um, whether it's litigation or transactional, anything, but how do you really know until you try? And because I've found it's just so many people go to law school without direction. And then, look, I graduated law school in '06. So a lot of my classmates just didn't have a job when they graduated, didn't have any direction. So their first job was foreclosure defense, right? And for those 4 or 5 years where that was hot, or bankruptcy. And it was just because, hey, there's a job and it's paying decent, and that's what I can do. And they had no idea. And here they are 5, 10 years into their career, now 15, 20 years. And a lot of them are not happy and are not doing anything that's fulfilling them. So I think, people should really kind of get their hands dirty and see what they want, and see what they like, and have more purpose and intentionality behind it, which is different than being a doctor or an accountant. You go to medical school, you can always decide whether it's feet or your face or your hands, right? Or emergency room or a surgeon a little bit later, but you want to be a doctor for the most part, right? Whereas law, it just attracts I think, a much wider audience.
I agree. And I think what the examples you provide are great. I think working or interning at a law firm, even when you're in high school or college, seeking out lawyers, and just talking to them. Sometimes I'll have college students reach out and talk to me, and their idea of law is largely based on TV or based on novels they've read. And there's nothing further from that life. I mean, we all
Right.
know it's not very glamorous.
I
There's
mean,
a lot of
every
time.
day is not like Suits.
Yeah, that's right. You're spending unless you're like criminal law is a little bit different, but if you're doing civil law, most of your time is spent in front of a desk, or at a desk. You're not trying that many cases. You're trying a couple of cases a year, for the most part. And you're doing depositions, but it's a different reality than what people perceive. You don't try a case within 45 minutes like a television show.
Right.
And so first understanding and appreciating the reality of whatever career you're pursuing for what it is, and then asking yourself, okay, this is what it is. Would I enjoy doing this? Would I be committed doing this for 30, 40 years, which is a long time? And it's fine, I just go into it thinking maybe I'll do something else. But if you're already going in there with doubts, considering how expensive law school is, and studying for the bar, and then having to pass the bar, and whatever loans you may have to pay later, it's a big commitment. And right now we have a paralegal working for us. She wants to go to law school. She did great in undergrad, and she intentionally decided to be a paralegal for a couple of years to make sure that's what she wants to do. And I think she'll do great, and I think she'll be a great lawyer. And I think that's a good approach. I think you basically, the idea of having to rush through law school and then rush through life, I think is a mistake. I'm not suggesting people take a gap year per se, but take that year, take whatever time you need to figure out that's what you really want to do. And there's no problem or disappointment if you want to do something else. No one is, this isn't a contest, and no one really cares what you end up doing. And it's your life, and you're not trying to impress anybody with what career you have or job you have or don't have. And if you have the type of friends who only care about, that you're a lawyer or a doctor, then you probably have the wrong set of friends. So,
Right. Or family.
yeah, true, right, exactly. So be sure before you commit to a job like this. Again, like I said, and this is true for any career, but lawyers, it's antagonistic, it's aggressive, it can be anxiety-inducing. This career, for people who don't appreciate, has the highest suicide rate, has the highest addiction rate, has the highest divorce rate, and that's because of what we do. And then the other top careers we all like to talk about, doctors, accountants, engineers, they have similar issues. So, and I'm not trying to dissuade people from going after top white collar jobs, but like you said, it's more than the money, and so you have to understand why you're doing this. If you're thinking you're just doing it for a paycheck, you're gonna get sorely disappointed.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And I did not take a gap year. I wish I did. Looking back, I think I would have been a much better law student in general. I think I just, I think a full year working in the real world would have helped mature me a little faster. Um, but it ended up working out just fine. But I definitely think that, and I can tell you at my firm, at the Rossen Law Firm, we've had some amazing rock star employees who have basically done that, taken 1 or 2 years as a gap year to say, look, I don't know if I really want to do this or not. Let me see how things work. And we've had a bunch that have gone on to become, go to law school and now graduate and become successful lawyers. So that's really cool. It's really exciting to see, especially when we can inspire somebody to, actually love the law and love being a lawyer. Because as I'm sure as you know, if you talk to a lot of lawyers, there's a bunch that'll just tell you, don't, you say, hey, should I be a lawyer? And they'll say, no, don't. And I think that's the worst advice anybody can give, because it's just not true. If it's right for you, it's right for you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's worth talking to lawyers who are happy, and worth talking to lawyers that aren't happy with any profession. Be honest and seek out people who both don't enjoy whatever profession you're considering to pursue, or whatever adventure you want to go on, and see what they like and don't like. Because maybe what they don't like is what you like, and what they like you don't. Maybe the things that make them excited to go to work are like the last things you want to do, and vice versa. And each of us is different. And there's only so many careers out there. There's billions of us. So ultimately, we're going to be funneled into so many professions, but we have to determine which one is best suited for us, and within that given profession, what sort of area to carve out for ourselves.
Right. And like you said earlier, there is, that evolution that can happen with people where, you started just writing and blogging really to help yourself. And then it evolved into, a whole second aspect of your career, a whole nother dynamic part of not just what you do, but really who you are, not just a person, but as an attorney. So I find that so fascinating how that just kind of come about over the course of years, and it's a way to give back, which I think is so important in today's day and age.
It is. And I think adjacent to that is the importance of any professional to develop relationships. And even though over the years I've been generally dealing with people much younger than me, or somewhat younger than me, these folks go on and they have their own careers, and some of them go in-house, and they're attorneys that I've mentored or helped in some way or another over the years. And now they're in a position to send me work. And I never did that with that in mind,
Right,
but that's sort of one of the side benefits of it. So, it really comes down to who you know. irrespective of what career you're pursuing. That's really important, having those relationships. And it reminds me of that book Never Eat Alone, which was popular about 2 decades ago. But just the title says it all. Just trying to always spend time to connect with folks, whether it's over a coffee or a meal, and developing those relationships that can lead to referrals.
Right. No, it's all about relationships, all about it, whether it's with clients, just human beings. That's one of the things that makes human beings special, is that we crave community and we crave attention and we crave, relationships. And you could be in technology and just don't, but you're still dealing with people, right? Everything that we do you're dealing with people. And as I've gotten older and more experienced as well, I've learned it. It's all, you can easily tell who's doing it to just try to generate a referral relationship, and who's doing it to try to just actually generate a real relationship, and that has a give and take, mutually beneficial for both parties. I
Right.
think
And
that's really important.
yeah, and that's really important. I'm sure all of us have gone to events where people are just sticking their cards in people's hands. That's not really how you,
Right.
the relationship comes first. And I think in this environment we're in, where we want everything immediately, that's hard for some of us to understand and appreciate. But relationships take time. Like any relationship takes time, whether personal or professional. And that generally precedes the referral. And so there's a lot of time sort of planting seeds and cultivating the ground, and the harvest comes down much later. And not to say that things can't be fortuitous, not to say that you meet somebody for the first time, they're for your case. That happens, but that's the exception, not the rule.
Right. Well, look, I learned a long time ago, it's people do business with people that they know, like, and trust, right? KLT. And you have to know them, you have to like them, and you really have to trust them. And those things don't happen overnight. It takes time. You have to cultivate those relationships and be genuine about it. A lot of it is being authentic. And there's a lot of people who are not authentic in today's day and age, but when you meet people that are, it really shows.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Frank, what I want to do now is let's take a quick commercial break to hear a word from our sponsor, the Rossen Law Firm. And when we come back, I really want to go much deeper in your role as a mentor. You mentioned personal strategic plans. So not only does that sound fancy, but it sounds like it's really useful and helpful, and just some of the things that you do, and that you offer to, to young people well, not just young people, but people of all professions and ages. So we'll be right back.
When something bad happens, who do you turn to? In South Florida, the answer is the Rossen Law Firm. Criminal and DUI defense for when bad things happen to good people. The Rossen Law Firm is a team of 8 criminal defense attorneys, including 2 board-certified criminal trial experts. They also have federal and white-collar divisions in the practice. To learn more about the team and how they can help you, connect on Facebook and Instagram at Rossen Law Firm. You'll also find helpful and entertaining videos on Rossen Law Firm YouTube channel. Just check this episode's description for all the ways you can connect.
And we are back on Success in South Florida with Frank Ramos. So, Frank, I know, we had a great talk before about a bunch of different things, but I really want to dive much deeper into this, coaching and mentoring. I don't know if I want to call it, is it a business or is it more of a passion? But I definitely want to really just dive deep into this.
Yeah, it's definitely a passion. It may turn into a business someday. It's not something I charge for. I have a website called miamimentor.com that's directed largely to lawyers. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. You just type in Frank Ramos. I should be one of the first names that pops up based on the algorithm that they use. And I've been posting daily on LinkedIn, I want to say, for about 7+ years.
Okay, that's a commitment.
Yeah, it is, including weekends and holidays. And then the website has been up, I think, before the pandemic, or maybe it came up through the pandemic, I forget which. And there I keep a copy of my books. Most of them are free. You can find them there at the website at miamimentor.com or on my LinkedIn under publications. I've written about 20-some books, written a bunch of articles, and speak and present a lot. And in addition to the substantive stuff I do for lawyers, I just speak a lot on personal strategic planning and how to define and pursue goals. And one of the books I wrote called Go Motivate Yourself, which is one of my earlier books. And it's also free, and you can find it on either the website or on the LinkedIn page, was the idea that each of us have passions, each of us have dreams, and each of us has talents. And if you were to create a Venn diagram and put all that up, the place where those three intersect, that's where you're supposed to be. That's your destiny. That's your really purpose in life. Figuring out what you're talented at, figuring out what you're passionate about and what you dream about, and putting them all in a circle and saying, okay, this is where they all kind of merge. And I think a lot of people are dissatisfied with their careers or even with their lives because they fell into something, they did what their parents wanted them to, they did what society wanted them to, they wanted to impress somebody, they wanted to make lots of money, and they never really figured out, one, what they were really good at, because I think that's important. So I think all of us have one or more talents. Two, what we're passionate about, and I think talents and passions are intertwined. Some people separate the two. Some people, Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs and others talk about don't pursue your passions, pursue your talents. I think they're somewhat, they overlap a lot. And then just your dreams and what, when you were a kid, what you wanted to be, and and sometimes when you have some free time, you're daydreaming, which the things you want to accomplish beyond being an astronaut or a football player or a celebrity, like some of the other things that came to mind. And so I spent a lot of time talking to people about that and trying to help them figure out their role in the world, which seems kind of large, but I guess, we all are trying to figure out what we want to do when we grow up, and we all want to figure out what our goal is and what we want to do. And when I was young, I thought, okay, well, what you really need is an idea. And if you have the idea of what you want to be, then you're set, like some big idea, I want to, whatever it might be. And then as I got older, I realized it wasn't so much the idea as it was having a plan to execute the idea, because an idea without a plan really isn't going to get you anywhere.
Right.
And now that I'm 52 years old, in the last few years, I realized that the idea is fine and the plan is fine. They're both very important. But I think that's only 20, maybe 25% of the equation. 75% or more of the equation is the hard work, is knowing what you have to do to work the plan to achieve the goal. And that's a daily grind. That's getting up early, staying up late, weekends, whatever it is.
Taking action.
Right, but taking action each and every day, having action steps,
consistent,
and holding yourself accountable, or having someone hold you accountable, or holding each other accountable to make sure you actually happen. And let's say you have a business plan and you have a business. It doesn't have to be a law firm, it could be anything that's based on relationships with other people. If you're not out there hustling and meeting people, you're not going to get referrals. And what I tell a lot of firms and companies is that a cheap way, an inexpensive way to develop relationships is through coffee. If you have, let's say you have a 10-lawyer firm, and I like using lawyers, that's what I'm accustomed to. So you have a 10-lawyer firm, and you told each lawyer that they had to meet for coffee twice a week. And they get to decide who they're meeting with coffee with. Obviously it's somebody local, but somebody can potentially refer them work. It could be a classmate, it could be somebody they had a case with, it could be somebody they volunteered with at a voluntary bar association, whatever it is. And so that's about 100 coffees a year. And then and so if you have a 10-lawyer firm and you're the owner of the firm, you're spending at most for those 100 coffees $1,000. It doesn't cost more than $10 to grab coffee with someone. It's probably less. And then 10 times 10, that's $10,000. At first you think, wow, $10,000, that's a lot of money. But then you're thinking to yourself, well, that's 1,000 meetings that have been happening over my firm over that year. And if you have 1,000 meetings firm-wide, and obviously people are meeting different folks, it is hard to believe that that's not going to be a return on your investment where you're not going to generate.
Yeah, the ROI, that's going to be astronomical.
Yeah, so that's a huge ROI on the investment. 10 grand seems like a lot, but 10 grand that results in 1,000 meetings, it's hard to believe that you won't get at least 100 cases out of that over the period of a year, maybe 50, but whatever it is, but it's going to be a significant amount. And
even 10.
Yeah, I mean, there's a firm that I advise that they do that. It's a firm out west that they had me go out and talk to them. And they did that. And they found that at the end of the year, they had generated $2.5 million of business over 10,000.
Just from coffee.
Yeah, just from coffee. So, and that's just an example. But what happened?
And did you get a percentage?
Yeah, it wasn't the idea about having coffee. Yes, okay, they had the idea. And it wasn't so much the plan, like, I'm going to have coffee twice a week. Okay, that's the plan. They actually had to have coffee twice a week. And
And they had to have it the days where they didn't want to, or the
yeah, that's a great
weeks when
point.
they were
I mean, how many
busy.
times do we have a meeting coming up and we're like, I really don't want to go to this
Right.
happy hour or this reception, or it's late, or it's Friday, or it's whatever day it is. I'm tired. I want to go home. I want to put on Netflix. I want to just go to bed. Um, and that's another reason why our jobs are so demanding, whether they're lawyers or anything else. There's the job part of it, and then there's the marketing part of it. And for entrepreneurs or people who have their own businesses, it's two jobs, really. It's a job that you're doing, and it's a job to get more work to keep doing the job you want to do. And that entails different things for different people. Part of it is in person, part of it's online through social media, part of it's just online marketing, part of it is a whole host of things. But all that takes time, and all that takes an investment. And so what I tell people regularly is, like, I just sit down with you. We can figure out in 5 minutes what your big idea and what your plan is. That's really not that hard to do. The hard part is the work, and I can't do that for you. I really can't. I mean, people can hire coaches. They can hire. That's why, I guess, why personal trainers are so popular. They're not there to actually teach you how to do a move. Like, within 2 weeks, I'm sure you can learn everything you need to do in the gym. You hire them because they're going to make you come and work out. And you're thinking to yourself, I'm spending all this money
It's commitment
on a personal trainer. I have to go. Right, exactly. And I think a lot of life coaches make money not so much on helping the plan as it is that they are there to annoy you to get you to do the work.
It's the accountability and commitment.
Yeah, like your personal alarm clock, I guess, basically.
Yeah.
So, which is not what I do. I basically walk you through it, and then I walk away and I hope for the best for you. But each of us has to do the work, and no one's going to do the work for us. No one's going to get us up early. No one's going to get us to bed early. Nobody is going to get us out of to work on the weekends. No one's going to get us to turn off the television. No one's going to get us into the gym. That's on us. And so when firms fail, when companies fail, when people don't meet their goals, it's on them. And I've never seen it happen that it was a bad idea or it was a bad plan. It just went to the round basket, basically. You just threw it out to the round file, and you're like, I didn't want to deal with this anymore. And so strategic planning is important, but strategic work is where it comes into, and that's where you make the changes.
I mean, that was just 10 minutes of gold right there. I couldn't agree more or have said it any better. I mean, I think it was you were spot on with that. From everything that I've seen, learned, practiced myself, seen in others, you're 100% right. So then what, like when you meet with people, again, you're not there to meet with them every single week, right? And you're not there to hold them accountable, but you're there to kind of give a kickstart, a boost, maybe some inspiration, maybe some parameters and guidelines. What do you see as the main reason, though, that people actually do fail? I mean, obviously they don't do the work, but why?
I think a reason people fail is that their expectations don't meet reality, and then they feel very anxious about that. And sometimes they have to make hard choices, and hard choices are hard to make. You are an associate. A lot of times I meet people and they're already lawyers. I don't meet, I'll meet law students from time to time, but they're already lawyers. They're already in $100,000, $200,000 worth of debt. They need bills to pay. Many of them are already married. Some of them have kids on the way. And their options, at least they see their options being very limited because they have to make X number of dollars week in, week out to pay the bills. And adulting happens very quickly when that happens to you.
Yes, it does.
And
Or
so
especially what I always say is when somebody's top line revenue increases and then they what most people do naturally is the bottom line, what they need to live off of increases as well. And sometimes it increases faster than the top line, meaning, oh, I got a nice raise, so now I'm getting a nicer car. Oh, I got another raise, so now I'm getting a house or a nicer house and this and that. And then there's always that perpetual cycle of added pressure to make sure that everything's taken care of.
Yeah, and I think it's really important when you're first starting on any career, especially if you're dealing with student loans or you have credit card bills, whatever it is. Don't increase your standard of living as much as you want to, as much as people your love are doing that. You have to be self-possessed about not doing that. And the more you can hold on that, the better. And if you can drive that car another year, 5 years, do that. If you can live in the 2-1 versus the 3-2, do that. If you can stay in your neighborhood versus going to the next neighborhood, keeping up with the Joneses, do that. And at some point, we all want nicer things. We all want bigger places. We all want nicer vacations, and that's fine. But doing that too early only adds to the stress. And
Right.
I think, ironically, the younger I mentor somebody, the easier it is. The more advanced somebody is, and they come to me, the more baggage there is, the more debt there is, the more ensconced they are, and the less opportunities they see. And more commonly, when I see people in those situations, they're also dealing with mental health issues, they're dealing with addiction issues, which are secondary from all the stress and anxiety they're already dealing with. So ideally, you don't get to that point. Ideally, you're living within your means. Ideally, you're saving more. Ideally, you're trying to develop relationships and you're controlling your career. But if you do get to that point, the question you have to start saying to yourself, okay, what can I do? What can I throw over the side of the boat so it doesn't start sinking? What costs can I reduce? What can I do to either improve my work product, improve the clients coming in through the door, maybe consider a new practice area? And you're not talking about lawyers, but if you have a business, is this business working? Is there a new product line? Is there a new service I can provide? Whatever it might be, because there's always opportunities there to take advantage of. And am I doing marketing the right way? Am I looking at exploring other ways to market whatever I'm providing, whether it's in person or online or whatever else it might be? And again, I don't think it's so much the planning part of it as realizing I'm in the situation and how do I get out of it. And a lot of it has to do with doing things that require a lot of time and work and energy. And you're already at a point in your career, like I feel like I've been past that, and now I'm back here again. And so it always goes back to doing the work. And if you find yourself in a tough situation, almost invariably, if you think through what the options are, and you don't have to think them through to death, and some people just spend too much time thinking about what the options are. Pick one and then pursue it. If it doesn't work, do something else, and give yourself sort of window as to whether or not you have to pivot to something else. But you have to roll up the sleeves and do the work. And again, like it could be a firm where maybe you got fired from your firm, and you go to another firm. You start your own firm. Maybe you're at a type of business and the business is not working, or that type of service is no longer in demand. Maybe you have to go back to school, maybe you have to get some additional training. But this is, I think, accepting the fear factor of what we do, accepting the fact that things can go south really quickly, accepting whether it's personal failure, corporate failure, business failure, understanding that is part of life, and that you cannot run it sometimes, and you can't outplan it. And the best you can do is accept it and proceed with it. So I think there's a lot of paralysis that happens, like, why me? Why is this happening to me?
Right.
And it's not happening to you. It's not like, the world isn't against you. It's just life is life.
And Frank, I'll tell you, so a few things to unpack on that. I know when I went to law school, when I went to UM, I started in 2003, and UM was still very old school then. And my first year legal research and writing professor was my small class. Maybe we had 15 of us, I don't know, 15 or 20. And we had our first paper, and he goes to us, he says, well, I have good news and bad news. And we all go, all right. And he goes, well, the good news is everybody here is really smart. The bad news is I'm required to grade you guys based on a C curve. So I'm giving out 2 A's. So just so you know, the way I graded it, a 94% is a C+. Here are your grades. Deal with it. That's the bad news, right? And we had so many smart people who had never failed, quote unquote, failed before in their lives, that were, saying, well, I tried. Why did I get a C? Right. And dealt with it. To them, that was failure. And I saw it in myself at times. I saw it in some of my classmates. One of my classmates, our very first law school final exam was a 5.5 hour contracts exam that was 11 30-minute fact patterns. And we all went out to Monty's to get drunk afterwards. And she spent the night in the hospital, and she had a panic attack and was taken out by ambulance. And so law school in a way kind of beats you down and instills that fear in people, because it's always, these are the 15 million ways you're going to lose your bar card, but never how to do some of these, how can I market successfully and ethically? Instead, it's no, don't do this, and this. And then on top of that, that fear for people who have been kind of conditioned to live in a, what I like to say, a get to know kind of world, whereas one of our firm's core values is get to yes, is looking back when I took the leap at 26 years old to start my law firm. I started with a buddy. We were both prosecutors together, and I was terrified. And if it wasn't for him, I might not have done it. I might have chickened out at the last minute. But for us, neither one of us were married, and I tell people all the time, especially looking back, I'm like, this was the best thing we could have done, because if I was 35, 10 years into the practice of law, married with kids, bills, it's a lot harder to leave if you don't have to bring a book of business with you. And as a prosecutor, you can't really bring a book of business with you. So I always joke and say we were too young and dumb to fail, because we were used to not making a lot of money, and we had nobody to support. So we didn't need that much money to get started, or to say, hey, our first year was a success, meaning we're not going to crawl back to the state, get a real job, or supplement. We always, part of our plan was, we could always, if shit hits the fan, we can always supplement with doc review, which luckily we never did. And things just kind of kept growing and growing from there. So, from my perspective, sometimes the more entrenched you are, the harder it is to make a big life decision and change, especially when you do have that big fear hanging over you.
Yeah, school I always found interesting. As I get older, school does a good job teaching you how to be successful. It does a very poor job of helping you fail and accept failure. And take public speaking, for example. There was a time that I was terrified of it, and I never did it. And as lawyers, that's part and parcel of what we do. And to get clients to lead organizations, you have to be a pretty good public speaker. But in order to get a pretty good public speaker, you have to go out initially and give some pretty bad speeches.
Right.
My
Yes.
first presentation sucked.
Right.
My first 24 presentations sucked. I've now done maybe 500 plus presentations in my career. I easily can get in front of an audience and speak for several hours without notes or anything. And I'm not doing that to pat myself in the back. I'm just saying that for me to have gotten to that point, I had to be willing to suck. And to be willing to suck, you have to accept that that's part of the process. And I don't think law school and probably a lot of schools don't allow you to fail, and they don't embrace failure, and they don't see that as a means to an end. Same thing with writing. I've written a lot. My first articles sucked. They were just awful. Right. If you're a trial lawyer, you're probably going to suck at your first trials. If you are a doctor, the first times you treat patients, you're probably not going to know exactly what to say or how to deal with patients.
Right.
And that's part of the process. And the idea that you're going to hit it out of the park from day one, you're going to bat 1,000, is ridiculous. And we have two boys, they're 25 and 22, and we taught them, look, this is the process. Failures are part of the process. You're going to do and say and not do and say things that are dumb, and you pick yourself up and you keep moving forward.
Right. Fail forward.
Yeah, you just always fall forward, fail forward. You always learn from whatever it is. And I think I've also learned a lot of that from being on social media. People who are active on social media understand beta testing. And what I mean by that is that they know how to put a message out, and they're willing to try out lots of different messages because they want to see what resonates and what doesn't. And if something falls flat, they're not like, oh, I can't believe I wrote that. How stupid.
Or never again.
Yeah,
never.
Like,
right? Okay.
I realized, okay, I can't. That's not going to work for me.
Yep.
And
just immediately pivot.
Yeah, having posted daily now for over 7 years, and in the last few years posted multiple times a day. I don't give a second thought if I give a post that just claims, because now I know. Now it's like it's the 10,000 experiments with the filament in the light bulb. In order for the light bulb to have worked, it had to have failed 9,999 times.
Right.
And so if you need to in order to become a public speaker, you're doing a lot of crappy presentations. Okay, that's fine. And we lawyers are such perfectionists. So many people don't want to do public speaking because they don't want to look foolish, and so they don't do it, and they never do it. They never get good at it, and you get a point in your career where, if you're a certain age, you can't suddenly feel like you have to do that, and that's where it's really uncomfortable. It's I was in my mid-40s when I thought to myself, wow, I'm really not a very good public speaker. I got to become a really good public speaker.
It kind of becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. And then at that point, it's okay for a 20-something to look foolish, but for a 40-something to look foolish, well, that's really hard. Or start over, whatever it might be. And so you have to make that decision at some point. Okay, what do I need to do to get to this point? And if I haven't done it out of fear or because of looking foolish, I'm going to have to do it. Otherwise, I'm going to stay in the same place. So what's more important, not looking foolish or achieving the goal? And for some people, it's not looking foolish, and that's their prerogative, and that's fine. For me, it wasn't. But at some point, for me, it was no, I got to move on. And so that's also part of the process. Talking to people and realizing that that's not a lack of skills; it's a fear that's holding them back, and identifying that for what it is. So I do believe you have to play to your strengths, but maybe you don't have a certain strength because the fear has held you back. And now at this age, I realize I'm actually a pretty good public speaker. I can communicate really well. And it wasn't because I wasn't good at it. It was I was too damn afraid to look like an idiot doing it. And I did at first look like a complete idiot. And it was uncomfortable. And then eventually I got comfortable looking at it like an idiot. And then I got good at it. And I got pretty good at it. And occasionally I'm sure I still sound foolish, but
but it's not afraid, right? How many people want to do something? Oh, I want to make a video on YouTube. I want to write this article. I want to try this, but the fear of failure, the fear of looking foolish, and they never do. And it can, they don't even know what it costs them. Right. So yeah, no, I completely agree. And so Frank, this was, nuggets upon nuggets of wisdom from you. I've really enjoyed talking to you in depth and getting to know you better and just learning so much from you. So for anybody listening to this, where's the best place for them to find you or connect with you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. Just type in Frank Ramos, Ramos. You'll find me pretty easily. I'm a lawyer, Clark Silverglade. If you're trying to figure out if you're the right Frank Ramos, or you can visit me at my website, MiamiMentor.com, where both on LinkedIn profile and on the website, you can find my books. All but one, I think all but one is free, and have videos and other things there. And again, I have the same conversations with people over and over again. So a lot of my materials are born of those conversations. So I can direct somebody saying, we can talk and I'm happy to talk to you, but after we talk, you probably want to read this book and you'll probably get some more information from that resource.
Fantastic, Frank. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I know our audience is going to absolutely love this episode.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the time.
Take care.